Well, the view in Washington, as in the general Anglo-Saxon, especially Western mainstream media, is fixated on Ukraine. Understandably so, because there is a violent conflict going on there, but it's more sort of indicative to me, Mike, of what's been going on in general over the past, 14 months now of this war, which is this absolute fixation by the United States, first and foremost, on Ukraine to the detriment of many other issues that are more important to countries in the so-called global South, for lack of a better term. And the fact that the mainstream media in the West, and certainly here in Washington, including, by the way, the statements coming out of the State Department and Secretary Blinken, again, the focus on Ukraine tells me that either they are missing the plot of what's going on, or that they are choosing to ignore it, because the implications of what's going on in Moscow today go above and beyond Ukraine. The war in Ukraine right now, as the broader Ukraine crisis, of which it is currently the most violent culmination, is really an emanation of much deeper geopolitical tectonic shifts in the world. And it's also a catalyst for things that had started well over a decade ago, which is this recalibration, geoeconomic recalibration of the global economy. The Russians and the Chinese really spend more time speaking to the rest of the developing world than I have heard the Europeans or the Americans actually speak. And it's interesting to see that the United States, which really sort of inherited the planet after the dissolution of the Soviet Union just 30 years ago, has now become or is becoming, I should say, sort of an increasingly marginalized player. I see this meeting in the context of other things that are going on, such as the Chinese moderated rapprochement between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Listen, it used to be that it was inconceivable that something like this would happen without the United States either leading it or at least being one of the most important players. But look at what's going on now. Next week, the Brazilian president, Lula da Silva, will be in China with a 5-day visit. The Chinese and the Russians are not fixated on Ukraine. They are thinking in terms of Eurasia as a huge economic bloc. And beyond that, they are appealing to the rest of the planet, especially to Africa and Latin America and the rest of the Asian nations, attracting them to their different model of development, which is not focused on the West exclusively, but where all of the players get the right to set the terms of the game which they are invited to play. Now, whether this is successful, we will have to wait and see, but it's certainly a different narrative, and it's a different tone of engaging with the rest of the world.